anything relative to what we're saying. Yes.
Getting back to the example that you used in terms of the problem of facts, when individualizing the readability of the text, if it's dropping the reading level and we're looking for a skill that's specific to causing a fact, is student A's, if this is student A and student B, is student A going to receive a 3 because they can identify the cause and effect on the lower reading level that's not particularly where they're supposed to be for that grade?
You have two standards. You have the reading standard and you have the cause and effect standard.
Right, so I'm just speaking in terms of specifically just causing facts.
So they can do the cause and effect.
And you'll get their 3 for their
Right,
lower
but if
reading
it's a
level.
below level reading level, then they wouldn't get a 3. They might get
For cause and effect, they would. The answer is, right. So let's say for instance, and this will happen, especially in the lower grades, where you are doing just what you're saying. So let's use a different subject for a second. Let's use science. Let's say in science you wanted to know if a child could do whatever skill it was. The level of reading of that assignment is inconsequential. Whether or not they can perform the task is what you want to know.
unless you're in English.
Right. And so if you're assessing something in English, if you're assessing, like you are, if you're assessing the reading level, right? That's, if you're doing an assessment of the reading level, then they get what they get for the reading level. You need to know what their reading level is. If there's a specific skill, cause and effect, all they need to be able to show you that they know how to do is that they know how to do cause and effect. The level to which they know how to do cause and effect will be determined by you. So for instance, if they have a rudimentary understanding of cause and effect, that might be a 2. If they have no understanding of it at all, that might be a 1. If they have a high level of it, that might be a 4.
Well, specific to that text that they're reading on the grade.
You're breaking out the assignment into 2 parts. On the cause and effect side, but on the reading side, so let's use numbers. Let's say they're 5th grade, and you have them read something that's 2nd grade, right? Because that's where they're reading is about this year, and that's what they're reading, right? So from a reading perspective, they get a 1. They get as low as they could get. From a reading perspective, they get a 1. With broad strokes, they get a 1. But to be able to show you that they know how to do the cause and effect, if this, then that, they can get whatever they can earn on that. So they might be able to show you, they can use, let's even go one step further. Let's say they couldn't read. Let's say they couldn't read. This is where it becomes very important for some special needs kids. Okay, 1 second. Let's say they cannot read, and you have to read to them. And you read to them. And it says, and it give them an example of, if this happens, then this is going to happen. So I need you to tell me a story of, if this can happen, that will happen. And the cause and effect, right? And they do it. They do it as well as anyone who would have written. It's where we've gone wrong before is we've graded them down because they couldn't read, so they presumed they couldn't do cause and effect. That's not true. They sat there and explained to you, like you hear me parents say, like if you say it to her, she can say it back. She can do it. She did the assignment. She did it. But what she couldn't do with the other parts. So when we put together individualized learning plans for her, if you're talking to her advisor, you say this kid really doesn't need to work on reading, so we're going to give her some more reading assignments to bolster up her reading. But she can do cause and effect. Check, move on to the next skill. But I'm sorry.
And that's where you're going to still get discrepancies in your CMTs and your things. Because there's lots of learning disabled kids of great comprehension, but CMT is going to be, if you're in 5th grade, it's going to be the 5th grade reading level. So it's going to look on the CMT like they don't have good comprehension. That doesn't mean they don't. That doesn't mean they don't understand cause and effect, but they can't. And that's where you get a lot of confusion with parents, because they're. So when you have to talk to a parent and say, this kid can't decode and this is what we have to target our instruction, their interventions have to be on decoding skills or fluency or whatever to bring that kid's reading level up to their comprehension. And you're going to get
And just very briefly, So we all want the kids to keep the reading level. So a lot of this deals with the introduction of a skill. So if you introduce the skill at a level in which they can understand it, read it, identify it, then a lot of times when you give them something more difficult to read, they can pick out words. But because they already know how to find that skill,
Right.
they can be more successful in that upper level reading.
Here.
Just with what Glenn was saying, the same goes for like the spelling test. If I'm doing a spelling test on like short vowel A sound, and one student has a list of like cat, hat, another student has like back, you know, more intense words. But how would you grade that with if both children got like 100% on the test, they got the concept of the short vowel A, but there's a diagram that there's a language that you're adding into it. So that's another skill.
Right, so
That's another skill.
these are, so I want to go through, these are the types of questions we need to ask one another. I don't think any one of us today knows all, this is exactly the type of conversation that we need to have. Because there isn't, in this country yet, there isn't an answer for that. Just so you're clear, there are answers, there's not the answer for that. And that's what we're doing. What we're doing is trailblazing. We are saying, okay, so, because here's the other parent question, right? The other parent is, wait a minute, my kid is reading 4 grade levels above this kid, and they had short level, and short vowel sounds, and, you know, my kid is coming up with scientific terms to, you know, dinosaur names for it, and this kid is saying cat, and they both get the same grade. Technically, yeah, because this is the assignment. Let me use a completely unrelated, but maybe similar conversation. Like, we hear the conversation around affirmative action. In affirmative action, people are under the impression that some people get into a school because they're black or Latino or Latina, and they are that they lowered the standards to get in. Because one person says, well, I had a 3.9 GPA. This black person had a 3.2 GPA. My GPA was higher. I should get in. That's the argument. This person got in because he lowered the standards. But if the standard was a 3.0, and they both got above a 3.0, there was no secondary standard that said, well, the highest among the two. If the value of the school was, we want to diversify, the 3.2 is actually a better standard bearer relative to the overall context of the school. But someone looking at the two, just one against the other, would say, but this one's higher. Yeah, but it's not higher relative to what this school values at this point. Same thing is true at this school. If we're saying that we want to show the child master a skill, then it's incumbent upon us as instructors to devise skills, devise assessments that call down for that skill. And then we put those skills together, and there are going to be some assessments in which there are 3 or 4 skills that are matched. And the kid's going to get 2 or 1 or none. Because they're all put together. But separated out, what do you do? This is where the challenge lies. There's no one in here who, and anybody who thinks they do, I think that you should pull and pump your brakes. We're all still trying to figure this out. We're all still trying to figure this out. It's these types of conversations that are going to get us there. Because Mrs. Monroe and I, and we all had many conversations, long conversations about this stuff over the years. And we've all been challenged by the limits of whether or not we can just identify. We've had kids, too often we have kids graduate from here, and we have to ask the question, you know, is that kid really in 12th grade? But they were a good kid, came to school every day, did most of what they were asked to do. They left with a 60.00000. For us, a 60.0000 must mean that they have the basic skills at Catholic Prep. Whatever we set as the bottom, whatever that standard is for the bottom, I guess this is the part, whatever that bottom standard is, it must be the bottom standard, but not below the bottom. So when you set up an assessment like that and both of them can do it, if that is the baseline, like if that's a 3 to get that score, then yeah, that's what it is.
Steve kind of at least transitioning to the next thing that I want to talk about, but I do want to mention that when you ask a question, we either say we don't know, or if we answer Glenn's question, or say, okay, well here's how we're going to do it. because we're making the answer up right now, doesn't mean that we shouldn't go to standard-based grading. Toward initiatives where we don't have all the answers out front, and that when we say, okay, we're going to do this along the year, and then we'll get better at it. I think some people kind of push back and say, well, I'm going to drag my feet so that it just goes back to how we used to do it. Okay, I'm more comfortable with a 100-point system, so I'm not really going to give this my all. I mean, look, there's so many questions I can't even answer. Like, forget it. I'm not really going to really invest in it. You don't have the option. It's just the way it is. We'll move forward with this. So, Elise mentioned, like, well, what are the base, what do you have to master before you go? You said there's 25 standards for middle school math, you know, there's umpteen in this subject, and there's so many in this other one. So each department is going to identify what we're going to call the power standards. And so we dismiss here, you're going to go into your departments, and you're going to talk about them. And I'm not going to make the decision, you know, I can't. I mean, I think Steve and I are really good at making decisions. Okay, but here's an opportunity for you guys to have some type of say in what you guys value as a department in terms of what's being said by the federal government. You're going to identify, say, in algebra, these are the 8 things that the kids need to be able to do in order to move on to geometry. You know, in order to move geometry algebra, so what they need to be able to handle. What are the things that they absolutely need to do? It doesn't mean that the other 20, 17, you know, whatever, are not important, but what are the ones that are most important for them to be able to be successful? Okay, so when you go into your departments, that's what I want you to focus on or have a conversation. And that also asks department heads to provide you an exemplar in terms of creating an assessment. So I think that, you know, I think the one that I asked them to show you would be something along the lines of, say, a test. But we do have to keep having the dialogue and keep asking the questions about what are assessments? Is this something that, you know, I could do orally in class? For sure, it can be. Every opportunity is an opportunity for assessment. But it's only an assessment based on what you, or as we do as instructors, to provide the students with the feedback that suggests to them, well, what they need to do, or what they did well, or what they need to do better. And so we always have to keep that in mind. Again, why are we doing what we're doing? Why is this hanging up on the wall? What's the purpose for this? How am I trying to promote what the goal is of the standard that's outlined that I'm outlining? How do I accomplish my agenda?
When we do power things, obviously we're probably going to use those all through the 5 points. Say we're doing something a little more easy, quick one with that power standard. They can do, the students can do that, they get a 3. But towards the end, you know, we're doing stuff that's a little more difficult and it's different, and they get like a 2. So on that power standard, they should like do a 3 on the more basic stuff, but then a 2 on the more difficult. How would we grade that throughout the year?
I think what we need to do in a situation like that, we have to be progressive enough to probably say that at the beginning of the year, students can't get a 3. It's impossible because they need to be here. And so if there's like multi-steps to whatever standard we're talking about, then in the beginning they may get a 2, and that has to be okay. And there has to be communication with the family that says, look, you know, it's kind of like Steve told me this, and I was like, oh, whatever, Steve, you're crazy. Like, he's gotten report cards for his son early on, and Steve was telling me that he was having, you know, I'm pissed off at this teacher because it says that Mason's supposed to be able to count to like 50, and I know he can count to 50, and he counts 75, but he only counted to 20, so he got graded down like as he hasn't met yet. You know, or I think he had to count to 40, but they've only taught him how to count to 20. So how can he get not needs when he hasn't been taught all the stuff to get to where he's supposed to be? Now I experienced the same thing where, you know, Cheyenne couldn't count to 20, and she did in class, you know, all her assignments saying she's only supposed to count to 10. So I'm like, well, that's BS. You're just setting her up for failure. And I think there needs to be some type of communication with the family in that particular set and say, look, there's a power standard. It's going to take all year for us to develop this skill. Right now, they're doing a really good job of what they're supposed to know. Okay, but in terms of meeting what the standard is saying, they're not quite there yet. And here are the things that they're going to have to do. Take the skill that they've accomplished at this point in time. Now there's going to be another application. And so I think that's going to make us be better teachers, and that we'll be better communicators to our students so that they understand. Because we're going to always have to keep in mind that we have, you know, Kim who's going to freak out when she doesn't get an A and she gets a 3, and we're going to tell her, look, here's what you need to do. You're going to have to be able to take what you can do well. Now I'm going to help you get to this point. So I think it's going to make us better instructors as long as we embrace that opportunity. We look at that as what it is, a chance to explain, to keep the open communication, and make folks understand that this is a journey, even throughout standard accomplishment.
Do you want us to identify and then delineate them?
I think that, I don't think we're gonna have time to do that. I think that, again, this is a year-long conversation. We should know what it is for promotion, since I would say, you know, not necessarily today. It has to be part of a conversation. We shouldn't take all year to do that, because we're gonna shortly, you know, after the first market period, we're gonna have to set up some type of schedule for students that are in need of remediation, and we're gonna need to be able to have a good reason for targeting certain kids. Is that we've got 8 power standards, we addressed 2 in the first market period, but we have kids that are already demonstrating they're low, and they're not gonna, they're lower than they should be in attaining that level that we need for them to have, you know, 3 or higher in these power standards. Then we want to know what those, you know, those 8, 5, 4, 2, whatever they are for those power standards in each of those.
Two things are going to happen, and we do realize this, and it could happen with relative haste. In switching over to this grading system, there are going to be some kids that we have, especially in high school, whose GPA is going to get hurt, like immediately. And you know, some of that is going to be you as advisors are going to have to know what we're talking about. That's why we haven't separated out the affective from the academic side. We just haven't, because you're all going to be on the phone. Someone's going to say, "What the heck? My kid has been a 4.0 student for 3 years. She's in her senior year, and you're really telling me that she has dropped that much?" Because there's no more CMTs in that kid's life. You know, more caps in the child's life. You really mean to tell me that? And yeah, it's really going to be that. So it is imperative, while you will not get a chance to do everything in terms of identifying and delineating the power standards, you must, not should, not kind of, you must have for your syllabi, for your courses, you must be able to identify the skills that are going to be expected for your children to learn at least in the first marking period. At least in the first marking period. I'd love, not just like, I'd love for you to be able to say to a parent, these are 25 skills that your child needs to know and be able to do by the end of the year. These are the ones that we consider the power standards. Power standards are those things that if they did nothing but these, they would be able to pass. And if they did it up to this level in each of those, they would be able to pass. That part's not an option. Y'all gotta come up with these for your syllabi. And we do syllabi for every grade, just so you know. So if nobody told you that, you've been told. So I'm saying to you that one, because you're all, I think almost all of you are going to be advisors, and even those of you who are helping out in the classroom, like who are classroom assistants, you're going to have to answer to the parent who comes in, "Can I just start the person, because they're going to have a better relationship with you." What the hell's up with this? Like, why are my kids going to this? You should have an answer. According to the skills that the state has identified, the federal government established, this is what the child has to do. Have an answer. If you don't, they're not going to be happy with you. First, one, as advisors, you've got to understand this. And two, during this time that you have, that you're going to go through and you're going to look at the power standards, put your head down, get them done, get ready for your syllabi, make sure you can present that information, because then what happens is, the last part is, the affective side of the house is meeting with the family, and they're trying to identify the challenges that they have. They need your syllabus. They need it right in front of them. They need to be able to talk to the parent. They need to be able to talk them down off the ledge and say, "This is what it says here. You signed this, man. You saw it. You got to go back to it. If you want to call Kumon, or you want to get on another, you want to get on Khan Academy, here are some of the ways in which you can do that. We'll put together your IOPs behind it, but you can't freak because it was there." There's nothing worse than a parent coming in and we sit down in one of those big meetings with the parent and get ready to say something. You say, "But you knew about this. It was in the syllabus." And she smashes it in our face and says, "No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. It was not listed anywhere." That's bad. That's really bad. We can tap dance our way out of that thing, but it ain't good. So these power standards, You gotta know them. Standards, you gotta know them. They have to be presented. They must be available to every single parent, everybody must be able to know what, in order to do well in 7th grade math at Capital Prep, what you need to do. 7th grade math, they